The dark reason brilliant minds walk away from social life. A man can be himself only so long as he is alone, wrote Carl Jung. And today, we invite you to explore the profound reason why the most brilliant minds often walk away from the noise of the crowd. Have you ever felt drained in social settings, or wondered why solitude feels like home to you? In this video from Spiritual Wisdom, we're diving into the powerful psychological truth behind why intelligence often leads to isolation, not as a weakness, but as a sacred path of clarity, depth, and self-realization. Comment below. I choose solitude for my spiritual growth if you resonate with this journey. And don't forget to share your experiences. Your voice may awaken someone else's truth. 1. Intelligent minds crave depth, not distraction. Brilliant minds do not retreat from society because they despise it. They step away because they see through it. In the words of Arthur Schopenhauer, talent hits a target no one else can hit. Genius hits a target no one else can see. This is not simply about intelligence. It's about a spiritual sensitivity to depth, to truth, to the energy beneath surface appearances. Carl Jung, a master of depth psychology, observed that many intellectually gifted and spiritually awakened individuals begin to feel estranged from the superficial rituals of social life. They are not interested in climbing social ladders built on performance and pretense. They are seekers of inner truth. To them, constant noise, artificial smiles, and status-driven conversations feel like a betrayal of authenticity. They see the game's ego-driven performances masked as friendship, gossip disguised as bonding, competition dressed up as casual talk. What the average person calls socializing, the awakened mind often experiences as spiritual noise, cluttering their clarity, distorting their energy, and diluting their purpose. These rare individuals crave a different frequency, one where silence speaks louder than words, and where solitude becomes a sacred space for expansion rather than a void to escape. They understand that social approval often comes at the cost of self-abandonment, and so they choose stillness. They are not antisocial. They are energetically discerning. They sense the weight of every room, every glance, every conversation. Their nervous systems reject small talk because their souls are designed for truth. The moment an interaction lacks sincerity, their entire being withdraws. This is not arrogance. It is spiritual intelligence. They understand that not every circle is meant for their energy, and not every conversation is worthy of their attention. They seek conversations that nourish the spirit, not performances that drain it. They don't isolate to disconnect from others. They withdraw to reconnect with themselves. In solitude, they hear the truth behind the noise. They remember who they are. In a world addicted to stimulation, their silence becomes a rebellion. In a culture obsessed with visibility, their invisibility becomes a source of power. They do not crave to be seen. They crave to see clearly. And clarity rarely lives in crowds. In their solitude, they don't find loneliness. They find alignment. They reflect. They journal. They question. They observe patterns. They trace emotions to their roots. They engage with their inner world like an artist refining a masterpiece. This sacred withdrawal is not weakness. It is preparation. They are not running from life. They are preparing to live it more consciously. Their retreat is their training ground. Their detachment is their devotion. Their solitude is their sanctuary. In this space, Spirituality is no longer a concept. It becomes a lived, breathing force. This is not a rejection of the world, but a deeper engagement with the soul's calling. Spiritual awakening is not loud. It is subtle, quiet, and often misunderstood. But for those who know, who feel, who remember, it is the only path that makes sense. 2. Solitude is not loneliness. It's liberation. Solitude is not a prison. It is the sacred workshop of the soul. For brilliant minds, it is not the absence of people, but the presence of deeper truths, where authenticity no longer needs to compete with performance. Carl Jung didn't view solitude as isolation, but as a necessary container for inner integration, a place where the unconscious can rise into the light without distraction. In a world obsessed with connection, noise, validation, and approval, the spiritual seeker often finds themselves fatigued by the superficial, sensing that something more honest waits beyond the applause. This is where solitude enters not as a punishment, but as a return to the self. It is in solitude that the masks fall away. You no longer have to perform. You no longer have to edit your truth to make others comfortable. You no longer have to dilute your brilliance to avoid standing out. You simply are, and in that state of being, something sacred begins to unfold. As Schopenhauer said, the intelligent person seeks solitude not because they hate people, but because they find richness in their inner world that the outer one rarely reflects. They are not antisocial. They are inwardly nourished by contemplation, by silence, by depth. This is not an escape. It is a conscious choice to shift from external approval to internal alignment. Spirituality, at its highest form, does not bloom in the noise of the world, but in the stillness of the heart. And for the awakened mind, solitude is the gateway to spiritual development. It becomes the place where intuition sharpens, where emotional wounds are observed without judgment, and where higher awareness is no longer clouded by the expectations of society. You begin to notice how much energy is drained in the performance of social life, how the smile you wear can betray the question screaming in your soul, how laughter can become a mask to hide existential discomfort. But in solitude, those illusions fade. You are no longer trapped in the character others expect you to play. Instead, you are given permission to meet yourself, to ask deeper questions, to create without censorship, to cry without shame, and to listen to the whispers of your own knowledge. It is not loneliness. It is communion with the self. And in that communion, a higher truth emerges. The soul does not thrive on constant connection, but on meaningful alignment. In solitude, you begin to hear the voice beneath the voice. You become aware of your thoughts as patterns, your emotions as messengers, your silence as presence. You see how solitude is not the absence of love, but the space where real love can enter, the kind that is not built on roles or needs, but on pure being. You discover that spiritual development is not always loud or visible. Sometimes it looks like sitting quietly with your thoughts, refusing to run, refusing to numb, choosing instead to feel, to face, to awaken. The more you do this, the more you realize that solitude is not something you endure. It is something you earn. It is the reward of self-respect, of inner maturity, of emotional sovereignty. And while the world may not understand your withdrawal, your quiet, your need for space, it does not have to. Because you are not here to be understood by everyone. You are here to understand yourself. And solitude is where that understanding becomes possible. So when brilliant minds walk away from social life, it is not a failure of connection. It is the birth of presence. It is the moment when a soul reclaims its power, not by being louder, but by becoming deeper. It is a silent revolution, where performance ends and truth begins. In this space, spirituality is not just an idea, it becomes your atmosphere. And the one who embraces solitude is not retreating from life. They are rising into it, fully, consciously, and with the kind of clarity only silence can provide. 3. Social settings feel misaligned with inner depth. The more spiritually awakened you become, the harder it is to tolerate the superficiality that defines most social interactions. It's not that you believe you're better than others, it's that your inner world has become too deep to be fed by shallow conversations. You walk into rooms where people are laughing, talking, performing roles they've been conditioned to play, but none of it reaches you. You feel like a foreigner in a place you used to call home. Carl Jung understood this dissonance well. He saw that as the psyche becomes more individuated, it becomes less compatible with the collective mask society wears. What used to be acceptable now feels artificial. What used to entertain now feels empty. And so, without drama or conflict, the intelligent mind begins to drift not out of anger, but out of necessity. Not because it hates people, but because it finally loves itself enough to stop draining its energy in places where its essence is not seen, heard, or honored. In most social settings, you are not truly there. You may smile, nod, or offer polite words, but inside, you're somewhere else disconnected, observing, retreating inward. The crowd talks about the weather, the news, or what someone else did, but your soul craves silence, truth, meaning. You're not antisocial. You're selectively social. You're not avoiding people. You're protecting your peace. The more self-aware you become, the more sensitive you become to energy, inauthentic energy, performative energy, draining energy. And in protecting your energy, you walk away, not out of superiority, but survival. The choice to walk away becomes a spiritual act, a declaration that your inner world matters more than outer approval. You stop forcing yourself into environments that require you to shrink, pretend, or conform. You'd rather be alone in truth than surrounded in illusion. You'd rather sit with your thoughts than scream over noise. Intelligence, when paired with spiritual wisdom, becomes unbearable in false spaces. That's the dark reason brilliant minds walk away, not because they are cold or broken, but because they've tasted the stillness of presence and can no longer stomach the chaos of pretense. Arthur Schopenhauer once wrote, "The more unintelligent a man is, the less mysterious existence seems to him. For those who see the mystery, the sacred, the invisible fabric of life, small talk is too loud, and empty rooms are more alive than crowded spaces. Solitude becomes a sanctuary, silence becomes a song, and presence becomes the only performance worth showing up for." So the brilliant mind slips away, not to isolate, but to integrate, not to disconnect, but to reconnect with something purer. And in that sacred withdrawal, something beautiful happens and the soul breathes again. 4. Society runs on ego, not truth. Society often disguises itself as a place of truth, but as Schopenhauer sharply pointed out, it is more often built on the fragile foundation of ego. People gather speak, and interact not always to share wisdom or authenticity, but to seek validation, to reinforce their sense of control, or to escape the discomfort of being alone with themselves. This endless performance may feel ordinary to most, yet to those who crave authenticity and meaning, it becomes unbearable. They begin to see through the veil, the small talk, the competition for status, the constant need to prove one's worth, and they recognize that these are not acts of genuine connection, but rituals of ego. What society celebrates as social life, they feel as a burden. Their withdrawal is not a rejection of life, but an embrace of it, because stepping away from the noise allows them to see reality clearly, unfiltered by vanity and social conditioning. Schopenhauer described this tendency as the natural instinct of deeper minds to retreat into solitude, and Carl Jung echoed it when he declared, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." For those on a journey of spirituality and spiritual awakening, solitude is not loneliness, but liberation. In solitude, the individual is no longer forced to play roles that suffocate the soul. Instead, they can observe themselves honestly, listen to the whispers of their inner being, and rediscover truths that society obscures. When stripped of distractions, the human spirit becomes sharper, more creative, and more authentic. Solitude provides the stage not for ego's drama, but for truth's quiet revelation. And in this silence, one begins to experience a profound clarity that no crowd can ever offer. In the modern world, these insights are even more visible. Social media has become a global stage where countless people chase likes, comments, and followers. But beneath the surface, what drives this activity is rarely the truth. It is ego, desperate for validation and fearful of invisibility. The perfectly crafted images, the witty captions, the competition for attention are not signs of connection, but signs of insecurity. For the spiritually awakened, such spaces feel hollow. They sense that this endless pursuit of approval erodes authenticity and distracts from the deeper work of becoming. By stepping back from these patterns, they do not turn away from life, but toward life's essence. They choose truth over performance, alignment over appearances, clarity over confusion. Of course, solitude is not without its challenges. To walk away from ego-driven environments often invites misunderstanding. Friends may question why you prefer a quiet evening over a crowded gathering, or why you choose reflection over entertainment. At times, the silence can feel heavy, almost like loneliness. But the distinction is vital. Loneliness is the absence of others, while solitude is the profound presence of yourself. In that presence, you encounter your own depth, your untapped creativity, your spiritual wisdom. Solitude strengthens the inner compass, giving you the ability to re-enter the world with clarity rather than compromise, to speak with authenticity rather than performance, and to live with freedom rather than conformity. Society may run on ego, but your spirit runs on truth. To retreat is not to escape, but to awaken. To walk away is not to reject, but to align. When you allow yourself to step beyond the noise, you create the space where spirituality flourishes and spiritual awakening unfolds. In that silence, you finally recognize that the greatest connection you will ever experience is not found in the approval of others, but in the clarity of your own soul. 5. The need for solitude starts young. Many brilliant and sensitive individuals feel out of place early in life. sensing a quiet dissonance in the way social life unfolds around them. While others may eagerly join the crowd, these gifted minds often perceive something hollow in superficial exchanges and begin to question whether belonging means sacrificing authenticity. Over time, this inner questioning deepens, and instead of conforming, they choose to value the richness of their inner world. As Carl Jung observed, loneliness does not come from having no people around you, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important to you. For those on the path of spiritual development, solitude becomes less of a rejection and more of a sanctuary, a sacred space where they can finally listen to their own soul without interference. By stepping away from constant noise and expectation, they begin a process of self-realization that no social approval can provide. Spirituality teaches that true growth is never found in the applause of the many, but in the silence where you discover who you are. For the mind that longs for depth and meaning, the endless cycle of shallow interactions quickly becomes suffocating. Solitude, then, is not isolation, but protection, a way to guard their energy, cultivate focus, and turn their attention toward questions that go beyond appearances. Just like a seed must rest in darkness before it breaks open to reach the light, a gifted soul requires solitude as fertile ground for spiritual awakening and transformation. Those who feel different often mistake their withdrawal as weakness, when in truth, it is a profound act of wisdom. Walking away from meaningless dynamics does not diminish life. It enriches it by clearing space for clarity, strength, and purpose. The world may encourage constant interaction, but the greatest thinkers and visionaries remind us that solitude is essential to higher awareness. They did not embrace quiet because they despised people, but because they understood that their true work required inner stillness. Solitude is liberation, not loneliness, a place where spirituality and authenticity converge, allowing the individual to align with deeper truths that cannot be heard in the crowd. To feel the pull of solitude is to recognize that your inner voice is growing louder than external noise, guiding you toward a stage of spiritual development where authenticity matters more than acceptance. Protect your quiet hours, because they are the soil in which your purpose takes root, the space where insight becomes transformation. When the world feels shallow, turning inward does not separate you from life. It prepares you to connect with it more deeply, to give back with greater authenticity and wisdom. 6. Solitude enables self-mastery and awakening. When you enter solitude, you are stripped of every mask that society places upon you, and what remains is the unfiltered truth of who you really are. Carl Jung once said, "Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakes." Alone, you come face to face with your fears, your doubts, your desires, and your hidden brilliance. This is not always comfortable. Silence has a way of exposing the very things we often run from. Yet in this discomfort lies the seed of transformation. Without the noise of others, without the endless need to perform or please, you discover the values, the creativity, and the purpose that were buried under layers of expectation. Arthur Schopenhauer, a philosopher Jung admired, wrote, "We forfeit 3/4 of ourselves in order to be like other people." Social life, with its rules, masks, and small talk, can easily become a stage where authenticity is sacrificed. The brilliant mind senses this loss more keenly than most, That is why so many intelligent people step away from the crowd, not because they despise others, but because they understand that constant conformity erodes the essence of their being. Solitude, then, is not a prison. It is a liberation. It is the soil where intelligence deepens and spiritual wisdom begins to awaken. The dark reason behind their withdrawal is that intelligent individuals see through the emptiness of shallow interaction. They notice how conversations circle around trivialities, how gatherings drain energy instead of feeding the soul, and how people cling to roles instead of truth. For them, such environments feel suffocating. Instead, they turn inward, where meaning, insight, and creativity reside. This is not escapism, it is survival. It is the realization that spiritual awakening requires silence, and silence requires courage. In the stillness of solitude, the unconscious begins to whisper, and those whispers are often the very truths that reshape a life. Great discoveries were rarely born in noise. Newton's apple did not fall in a marketplace. It fell in the quiet of nature. Jung's groundbreaking work emerged not in the crowd, but in the hours he spent alone, exploring his inner world. The solitude that once feels like loneliness slowly reveals itself as a companion, teaching you that the greatest company you will ever have is your own soul. In this sacred space, your intelligence sharpens, your imagination blooms, and your spirit learns what freedom truly is. When you feel uneasy in social situations, when you sense that chatter and performance leave you drained rather than nourished, recognize this as a signal. It is not a weakness, it is a calling. Solitude is inviting you to awaken, to detach from the roles that no longer serve you, and to uncover the depth of your own mind. It teaches you that walking away from the crowd does not mean rejecting life. It means embracing it more authentically. To step into solitude is to step into truth, and in that truth lies the power to become unshakable, authentic, and fully alive. 7. Silence reveals what the world tries to hide. In solitude, thinkers begin to uncover the hidden architecture of human life, noticing why silence terrifies so many, why distraction is lifted up as if it were a virtue, and why countless relationships exist not from love, but from a shared attempt to avoid themselves. This awareness cuts deeply, because to see clearly is to recognize how fragile much of social life really is. Yet it also liberates, for silence reveals what noise has always worked to conceal. Carl Jung reminded us, who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes. And this awakening is the foundation of spirituality and spiritual awakening, the inner turning where solitude is no longer emptiness, but revelation. As you sit with silence, it becomes impossible not to notice how conversations often serve as barriers, words stacked upon words to keep the speaker from facing their own unease. Laughter at crowded tables, endless exchanges of opinions, and constant commentary are rarely about truth. More often, they are strategies to avoid the stillness that would expose hidden fears. Those who are drawn toward spirituality sense this instinctively. They withdraw, not because they lack love for people, but because they will no longer settle for illusions disguised as connection. They discover that many friendships are built upon habit, convenience, or fear of loneliness. And once you recognize this pattern, you can no longer pretend not to see it. This recognition first brings grief, because it strips away the comforting stories you were taught about belonging and companionship. you begin to see how society glorifies distraction, how it trains people to run from themselves with entertainment, gossip, and endless noise. What is called connection is too often disconnection, a performance meant to silence the deeper questions rising from within. Love itself becomes confused with dependency, a clinging not born of wholeness, but of fear. To see this clearly is painful, yet that pain is a doorway, for it frees you from illusions that once held you hostage. Solitude, once feared, transforms into a sacred sanctuary where your mind clears, your heart steadies, and your spirit expands. In the quiet, you begin to understand that silence is not a void, but a mirror. It shows you the truths you once resisted. It reflects your wounds and your longings, and it opens the path to an authentic life. Spiritual awakening is nothing less than the courage to face this mirror without flinching, to let silence strip away every mask until you are left with only what is real. This is why brilliant minds often walk away from social life. They are not rejecting humanity, but seeking truth. They hear in silence what society drowns out, the quiet call to become whole. And in choosing solitude, they exchange illusions for clarity, dependency for freedom, and noise for a wisdom that no crowd can offer. 8. The courage to choose solitude is rare. Society often misunderstands solitude, mistaking it for antisocial behavior, depression, or cold detachment. Yet for the wise and for brilliant minds, solitude is never about escape, but about elevation. To choose solitude is to choose clarity over noise, depth over distraction, truth over superficial approval. It is a deliberate act of courage, for it requires stepping away from the crowd to stand face to face with yourself. Solitude allows you to reclaim your power, not the kind that dominates others, but the inner mastery that no one can take away. As Carl Jung said, "Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakes." And it is in the silence of solitude that this awakening begins. When you are alone, the expectations of society fall away, and what remains is your raw essence, the part of you that yearns not for applause, but for alignment with a higher purpose. For those devoted to spirituality, solitude becomes a sacred ground where spiritual development deepens, where the restless mind grows still, and the soul begins to speak. In solitude, you are no longer pulled by the tides of other people's opinions, but carried by the current of your own inner wisdom. History shows us that many of the greatest thinkers, visionaries, and creators sought solitude not because they rejected humanity, but because they understood that creativity and wisdom often bloom in silence. Solitude becomes the soil where your imagination grows strong roots, where your thoughts become sharper, and where clarity emerges like sunlight breaking through the fog. What the world calls loneliness, the awakened spirit calls liberation. For solitude is not emptiness, but presence, the presence of your truest self, unmasked and unshaken. In choosing solitude, you discover that you were never truly alone. For in that silence, you find connection to something greater than yourself. It is in solitude that you encounter the divine, hear the whispers of intuition, and awaken to the higher truths hidden beneath life's distractions. This choice is rare because it demands courage, but it is also transformative, for it teaches you that fulfillment is not found in the noise of the world, but in the depth of your own being. Solitude gives you back to yourself, reminding you that true strength lies not in the acceptance of others, but in the alignment of your spirit with its purpose. To walk this path is to embrace liberation, to nurture creativity, to sharpen wisdom, and to open the door to spiritual growth that leads you toward becoming the fullest expression of who you are meant to be. 9. Solitude is a spiritual rebellion. Solitude, when seen through the lens of intelligence and spiritual wisdom, is not simply about being alone, but about reclaiming the highest form of independence. In a world consumed by noise, distractions, and conformity, the act of choosing stillness, authenticity, and inner truth becomes a radical rebellion. Carl Jung once observed, "Loneliness does not come from having no people around you, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important to you." This captures why brilliant minds often withdraw from society, not out of disdain for others, but because the superficiality of constant socializing feels like a heavy mask that suffocates the soul. To them, solitude is not emptiness. It is a sanctuary where clarity, peace, and authenticity can thrive. Schopenhauer believed that the truly intelligent person gains more satisfaction in self-reflection than in social gatherings, because they see how often human interaction revolves around vanity, envy, and shallow talk. Conversations filled with gossip or trivial competition cannot nourish the deeper hunger of the mind and soul. For those with heightened awareness, being immersed in such environments creates a spiritual dissonance, a sense that their inner depth cannot be expressed. Solitude then becomes their oxygen, a necessary space to breathe, to think freely, and to protect their essence from being diluted by noise. What may appear to others as isolation is, in truth, an act of courage to preserve authenticity in a world that rewards conformity and punishes uniqueness. Carl Jung reminded us that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But that privilege often demands separation from the crowd. Spiritual awakening requires peeling back illusions, breaking free from collective expectations, and unmasking the unconscious games of society. When you begin to awaken, you see the desperate need for validation, the endless distractions, and the subtle manipulations that keep people trapped in roles not their own. To remain aligned with truth, the brilliant soul steps away not in arrogance, but in devotion to clarity. Intelligence, at its highest form, is not only the ability to think, but also the discipline to protect the mind and soul from corruption. This quiet departure is not rejection. It is preservation, a rebellion of the spirit that values truth over approval and depth over applause. Solitude is liberation, not loneliness. It is the fertile soil where creativity blooms, where insights are born, where transformation becomes possible. In silence, the mind hears what the world cannot teach. In stillness, the soul encounters wisdom that no crowd can deliver. The dark reason brilliant minds walk away from social life lies not in hatred for people, but in a deeper love for truth, clarity, and spiritual independence. Misunderstood by many, their choice is actually a luminous act of protection, guarding their essence so that it may continue to expand and evolve. And while the world may see it as detachment, it is in fact the most profound act of connection, a connection to one's truest self, a connection to the eternal source of wisdom, and a connection to the freedom that only solitude can give. And perhaps now you understand why some of the most brilliant minds retreat from the noise of the world not out of arrogance or fear, but as a sacred act of preservation and clarity. As Carl Jung taught us, loneliness does not come from having no people around you, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important to you. If this message resonated with your soul, let it be a reminder that solitude is not a flaw, it's a sanctuary for transformation. If you found value in today's video, please like, share, and subscribe to Spiritual Wisdom. And don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you won't miss the powerful truths we reveal in our upcoming episodes. Your journey matters, and you're not walking it alone. Synchronicity ends here, but your quantum journey is just beginning. As Carl Jung once said, "In all chaos, there is a cosmos. In all disorder, a secret order." If you've ever felt the sudden silence after a season of synchronicities, you're not lost. You're being initiated. This is not the end. It's the quantum pause before transformation. Today, we'll explore why the absence of signs might actually mean you're closer than ever to a spiritual breakthrough. Have you ever experienced this eerie calm in your journey? Share your story in the comments. Your insight could be someone's confirmation. And if you're ready to deepen your spiritual awakening, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Spiritual Wisdom for more content that aligns your soul with your next level. 1. The silence after synchronicity is not a mistake. It's the quantum pause. When synchronicities vanish and the signs that once guided your spiritual awakening fall silent, most people panic. They assume something has gone wrong, that they've lost their alignment, missed a step, or that the universe has turned away. But what they don't realize is that this moment of silence is not abandonment. It is sacred. It is strategic. It is the quantum pause that always comes before transformation. Just like in music, where the most powerful part of the symphony is preceded by a deliberate silence that grips the air and demands your stillness, your spiritual path follows the same law. In quantum physics, this space of stillness is mirrored in the concept of superposition, where all potential outcomes exist at once in a suspended state of possibility. This is not chaos. This is not failure. This is the place where true transformation brews beneath the surface, silent, invisible, and deeply intelligent. The ego, however, hates this stillness. It clings to proof, to patterns, to predictable signs. But the soul knows better. The soul knows that the absence of synchronicity is often the clearest sign that a major leap is preparing to unfold. When the universe withdraws its obvious guidance, it is not pulling away. It is inviting you to stand on your own energetic foundation, to trust what you've integrated, and to move forward with spiritual wisdom rather than spiritual dependency. This is where many turn back, believing they've lost the magic. But the truth is, they were never meant to rely on the signs forever. The signs were training wheels. The synchronicities were breadcrumbs leading you back to yourself. Now, in this quiet, you are being asked to embody what you once observed, to become the signal instead of waiting for one. This is where your vibration is no longer reactive to the external, but deeply rooted in your internal knowledge. The silence is asking you, can you hold your faith when there is no whisper from the divine? Can you continue to evolve even when the universe stops sending confirmation? This is not spiritual abandonment. This is spiritual maturity. This is where your awakening becomes real, not because it's confirmed by feathers, numbers, or dreams, but because it lives and breathes inside you. The pause before a rocket launches is filled with silence and tension, but no one mistakes it for failure. The same is true of your evolution. You are building pressure, gathering force, refining frequency. And just like the quantum field holds every possibility until one is observed, your life is holding every potential reality right now, waiting for your consciousness to stabilize and choose. In this pause, you are not being punished. You are being initiated. Your old self cannot cross into the next chapter. That's why the signs stop. They are not meant for who you are becoming. You are being asked to navigate with spiritual intelligence, with the inner compass of your higher self, not the external GPS of the universe. It is in this space, where nothing seems to happen, that everything is happening. It is in the absence of signs that your energy is upgraded. It is in the stillness that your frequency becomes precise. And it is in this quantum moment, silent and sacred, that your next version is being born not with fireworks, but with stillness. So don't rush it. Don't resist it. Let the silence do what signs cannot. Let it refine you. Let it remake you. Because what awaits you on the other side of this pause is not just another sign, it is a quantum shift in your entire way of being. Are you in the middle of your own quantum pause? If you're ready to trust the silence and step into the next phase of your spiritual awakening, comment below, "I will meditate," to affirm your commitment. 2. You're between timelines. Old one is dissolving, new one forming. You are in a sacred transition, a liminal space where the old timeline is dissolving and the new one is still forming. Even though nothing visible is happening, everything is shifting at the quantum level of your being. The signs that once felt like spiritual encouragement, the repeating numbers, the serendipitous encounters, the perfectly timed events have now vanished. And in their absence, your nervous system begins to panic, desperately trying to find proof that you're still aligned. But this is exactly where your next level of spiritual development begins, not in the presence of signs, but in the absence of them. You are being called to trust the unseen, to master inner coherence without external confirmation. Carl Jung once said, "Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakes." This moment is your awakening. This is your training ground, your solo test. Like a child who's just had the training wheels removed from their bike, you're being asked to ride with no external guidance, only the balance you build within. And although it may feel unsettling, this is where your strength is forged. The universe hasn't abandoned you. It's simply watching to see if you've integrated what you claim to believe. This is not a retreat of support. It is a sacred initiation. The silence is not the void. It is the womb. Spirituality is not about being constantly surrounded by signs and miracles. It's about becoming the miracle. When the signs stop showing up, it's because you are meant to become the sign for yourself and for others. The universe is teaching you a higher lesson: to hold your energy steady when there is no validation, to walk by soul and not by sight, to develop spiritual maturity rather than dependence. This silence is a hidden gift. It's a classroom disguised as a pause. The absence of synchronicity is not a mistake. It is the curriculum of spiritual self-trust. You are not broken. You are being rebuilt quietly, internally, powerfully. Every second that you sit in this in-between with grace, you are recalibrating your nervous system, rewriting your energetic code, and preparing to receive a reality that matches your frequency, not your fear. And this inner alignment is what creates quantum shifts. Not hustle, not proof, not waiting for another sign, just presence, patience, and unwavering faith in your inner knowing. The old you needed confirmation to believe. The new you is the confirmation. So if you feel like everything has gone silent, like the magic has stopped, like the universe isn't answering, remember, this is your soul's way of proving to you that you never needed the signs in the first place. You were always the signal. You were always the shift. The new timeline is forming, and your spiritual development is being refined through this sacred silence. The question is, can you stay steady in the in-between? Can you trust the pause? If so, comment below. I trust the pause, and let the universe know that you're ready to embody the frequency of what's already yours. 3. Synchronicities stop to prevent dependency. When synchronicities fade, it's not a glitch in your spiritual journey. It's the most intelligent design of the universe at work. You see, when those angel numbers, signs, symbols, and dream messages vanish, most people panic. They think they've fallen out of alignment or lost their connection. But the truth is far more profound. The absence of synchronicity is not a void. It is a sacred upgrade, a transition point only those with deep spiritual wisdom can embrace. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." This is that moment. The universe isn't abandoning you. It's inviting you to embody everything you once needed confirmation for. You are no longer the seeker waiting for proof. You are now the source. And that's where quantum transformation truly begins. If signs appeared every day without interruption, you would become addicted to them. You would build your confidence based on external winks instead of internal knowing. But true mastery begins the moment you can walk forward without evidence, when you can hold your frequency with no applause, no confirmation, no cosmic pat on the back. That's not spiritual regression. That's sovereignty. This is the stage of the journey where your consciousness graduates from student to creator. The universe doesn't want you to follow breadcrumbs forever. It wants you to realize you were the bread all along. And just like a symphony swells in silence before the crescendo, your life pauses so your nervous system, your brain, and your soul can recalibrate to a higher frequency. Neuroscience confirms that during deep transformation, the brain must pause old prediction models and form new ones, free from familiar loops. Spiritually, this pause is not a dead end. It's a doorway. You're not being tested to see if you still believe in magic. You're being refined to become the magic. This is the embodiment phase, the invisible but powerful moment when identity becomes stable without performance, when the energy becomes who you are, not what you chase. You are being asked to trust, not because you see, but because you know. Spiritual intelligence means you don't just respond to signs. You become the field that attracts them effortlessly. The stillness that surrounds you now is not punishment. It is preparation, a sacred silence that builds your capacity to hold more truth, more power, and more light without external reassurance. You are learning to move not from signal, but from inner resonance. The same force that once whispered to you in numbers and synchronicities now speaks directly from within your intuition, your instincts, your cells. This is the leap from dependency to divinity, from spiritual curiosity to spiritual embodiment. The quantum journey was never about chasing signs. It was always about becoming the signal. Where synchronicity ends, self-mastery begins. This is your cosmic rite of passage. No more breadcrumbs, no more doubt. Only alignment, only embodiment. Only you fully aware, completely awake, and deeply trusted by the universe to walk forward as the living proof of everything you've ever believed in. Don't forget to subscribe for more spiritual wisdom on how to break free from dependency and trust the deeper intelligence behind your awakening journey. 4. Turbulent emotions. Evidence of imminent shift. Turbulent emotions are not breakdowns, but breakthroughs in disguise. They are not signals that you're off course. They are the exact evidence that you are standing at the threshold of transformation. When you begin to feel an intense wave of doubt, sadness, anxiety, or restlessness, don't retreat. Recognize it as spiritual turbulence. This is not chaos, but the vibrational shake that happens when your soul begins to cross timelines. Just like quantum particles caught in a state of superposition, your consciousness is suspended between who you were and who you are becoming. On one side, your higher self pulls you into expansion, truth, and alignment. On the other, your subconscious mind clings to the safety of what is known, even if it's outdated, misaligned, or suffocating. This collision of timelines causes inner friction, and that friction often manifests emotionally. The mistake most people make is assuming this discomfort means failure. In truth, it's a signal that your system is adjusting to a new frequency. In spirituality, we call this the void, the sacred pause before the next chapter fully arrives. It's the space where nothing feels clear, yet everything is recalibrating. You may no longer resonate with old environments, conversations, or patterns, but you've not yet fully anchored into the new ones either. It feels like floating between dimensions, and it is. This is the invisible threshold where the universe watches silently to see if you will retreat out of fear or continue forward in faith. It is the silence before the song, the pause before the quantum leap. Think of it like a rocket ship just before takeoff. The system shakes, pressure builds, and it feels unstable. But that is the moment just before flight. In emotional terms, this looks like crying for no reason, feeling exhausted by minor things, or having deep existential thoughts that make you question your path. Carl Jung once said, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain." What you're feeling isn't regression, it's spiritual intelligence in motion. These emotions are the side effects of energetic expansion. It's like outgrowing clothes that once fit you perfectly, they become tight, restrictive, and eventually uncomfortable. So does an old life, an old mindset, or an old identity. This is not the time to numb yourself or push your feelings away. This is the time to breathe into them, listen to them, and allow them to guide you. Because your tears are sacred, your doubt is data, your sadness is signaling your readiness for a shift. The very fact that you feel the tension means your spirit is evolving. You are not weak for trembling in transition. You are not broken for feeling lost in the in-between. You are becoming spiritually aligned at a quantum level. And like any sacred metamorphosis, it comes with resistance before release. You are being upgraded. Every surge of emotion is helping you shake off the remnants of who you no longer are, so you can step fully into who you're meant to be. The discomfort is not the end. It is the intelligent contraction before the expansion. It is the universe asking, are you ready to become what you've been praying for? Let the turbulence guide you. Let the pressure shape you. Let the emotions move through you. Because you are not standing in chaos. You are standing inside the alchemical chamber of awakening. This is what spiritual wisdom feels like in real time. And once you understand that, you no longer fear the storm, you learn to harness its power. Have you felt those emotional waves lately? That inner turbulence isn't chaos, it's confirmation. If you believe this shift is real and you're ready to rise with it, declare it in the comments. I am ready for the shift. 5. The final test is not cosmic punishment. It's internal patterning. Just when your spiritual development feels like it's reaching its peak, when you think you've aligned with the universe, when you've been faithfully following synchronicities and feel closest to your breakthrough, everything suddenly becomes quiet. The numbers stop repeating. The dreams go blank. The signs that once guided you with precision fall away, and a strange silence fills the space where divine confirmation used to live. But this silence is not abandonment. It is sacred. It is not a punishment. It is purification. This is the moment the universe takes a step back so you can meet yourself, not as the person you've been, but as the version you must now become. Life isn't testing your worthiness. It's reflecting the deepest patterns still living in your subconscious, rising up like smoke before the flame takes them. This final test isn't cosmic cruelty, it's alchemical fire. And the impurities that rise within you are not flaws, but the remnants of who you used to be, surfacing so they can be burned away for good. This moment is like the quiet before a symphony's crescendo, a breathless pause charged with energy. But many people misinterpret it. They panic, they spiral, they cling to what's familiar, thinking they've done something wrong. Yet this is precisely the threshold. Carl Jung reminds us, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. So when life triggers your old wounds, when someone appears to mirror your past trauma, when an opportunity falls through or a delay forces you into stillness, don't ask, why is this happening? Ask, who must I become to meet this moment from a new place within myself? Because the true test is never about the external situation. It's about the internal self-concept it activates. The universe isn't trying to hurt you. It's trying to see if the old version of you will respond, or if the higher version you've been developing in silence is finally strong enough to lead. This is the edge of transformation. Right here where discomfort intensifies, where the temptation to quit is strongest, and where the shadows you thought you'd healed reappear in sharper detail. This is not a regression. It's a final scan of your soul's system to determine whether the energetic pattern that ruled you has been rewired, or if it's simply been suppressed. You are not being punished. You are being prepared. This is the sacred reset, where your nervous system, your emotional habits, your spiritual muscle memory are being rewritten. In this space, you are not meant to seek signs. You are meant to become one. The signs now live within your calm response, your new boundaries, your elevated choices. That is where your spiritual awakening speaks loudest, not in fireworks, but in the peace that comes from inner mastery. And so, when it feels like the world is going quiet on you, know this: the silence is your new teacher. The absence of external validation is an invitation to trust your internal evolution. The chaos is not here to break you. It's here to see if you will break the loop. You're not being tested for punishment. You're being offered a mirror. And in that mirror is your final confrontation with the parts of you that cannot come with you into your next chapter. Let them go. Let them dissolve. Let them burn. And walk through the fire, not as the seeker, but as the embodiment of the answer. Because spirituality isn't just about what you attract. It's about who you become when nothing outside of you seems to work, and yet you still choose alignment, peace, and higher vision. That is spiritual development. That is the true sign that your quantum journey has already begun. If you're ready to break free from old patterns and pass the final test with spiritual clarity, comment below. I am in the flow of abundance. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications to continue your quantum journey with us. 6. The calm after the storm. Confirmation of quantum jump. After every intense surge of spiritual awakening, there comes a stillness so deep that it feels unsettling. But that stillness is not the absence of connection. It is confirmation of transformation. When the synchronicities stop, the repeating numbers fade, and dreams become quiet, many begin to worry that something has gone wrong. But in truth, that quiet is a quantum signal. It is the body's way of saying, you've arrived. Your nervous system drops into calm. Your heart rate stabilizes. Your breathing deepens. And suddenly, you're no longer in survival. You've moved into creation. This moment is not empty. It is full of intelligent spiritual wisdom. Carl Jung taught that transformation doesn't shout, it whispers. That physiological calm, that serene pause after a storm of signs and inner turmoil, is not a void. It is the presence of coherence, the deep alignment between your inner self and the quantum field. Neuroscience calls it parasympathetic dominance. Ancient mystics called it satori. Both point to the same truth. You are no longer fighting life. You are flowing with it. When your system finally stops scanning for danger, when your soul stops questioning its worth, when your body no longer tenses with anticipation, that is when you've crossed the invisible threshold. You don't need a burning bush or a flashing number to know you're in alignment. You feel it in your cells, in the subtle intelligence of your breath, in the quiet confidence that replaces frantic searching. The universe isn't being silent. It's being still because you've matched its frequency. You've become the calm. That's the most powerful proof of all. You're not being tested anymore. You're being trusted. The signs stopped because you no longer need them. You've outgrown the training wheels of synchronicity. You are no longer a seeker. You are an embodiment. That's why the numbers fade. That's why the dreams go quiet. You have shifted from external signs to internal knowing. You are the oracle now. Your energy speaks louder than your words, and your vibration has become your confirmation. This shift marks the beginning of a new intelligence. It's not the fire of awakening, but the still water of mastery. This is where your spiritual wisdom deepens into integration. You don't just believe, you become. This is the sweet spot where discipline meets divine flow, where presence replaces performance, where spiritual identity is no longer something you chase, but something you live. And yes, it may feel strange at first, this peace without noise, this clarity without effort, but this is the reward for every inner battle you fought in silence. This is the quantum signature of a soul no longer fragmented. You're coherent, you're aligned, you're free, and you don't need the world to confirm it. You feel it in your being. The calm after the storm is not the end, it is the evolution. 7. Stabilization, repetition of coherence, not perfection. Stabilization is not about striving for flawlessness. It is about the repeated return to your highest alignment, to your inner coherence, again and again, until it becomes second nature. A quantum leap is not made permanent by the height of your spiritual high, but by the steadiness of your daily embodiment. It is not the sparks of synchronicity that solidify your transformation, but the quiet, repeated choice to act from your future self, even when no one is watching. As Carl Jung once said, you are what you do, not what you say you'll do. The quantum field responds not to isolated moments of inspiration, but to your sustained vibration, your energetic rhythm that becomes consistent over time. Like adjusting a radio to a new frequency, the first few turns might produce static and interference, but the more often you return to the frequency of your new identity, the clearer the signal becomes. If you don't stay consistent, the shift flickers. If you do, it stabilizes, and what once felt unfamiliar becomes your new emotional and spiritual baseline. In the process of spiritual awakening, many people mistake the absence of external signs for failure. They chase perfection and feel discouraged when the old patterns temporarily return. But the spiritual path has never been about avoiding setbacks. It is about cultivating the awareness to return faster, with more grace and less self-judgment. This is spiritual intelligence in motion, realizing that each return to coherence reinforces your energetic signature, like a musician who practices not until he gets it right once, but until he can't get it wrong. The universe is not measuring your worth by how flawlessly you perform, but by how faithfully you return to your essence. And each return is a declaration. I am committed. I am becoming. I am aligned. The more often you make that return, the easier it becomes for the nervous system to relax into your new identity, until your entire being vibrates in harmony with the life you are calling in. Repetition, not perfection, is what reprograms your subconscious. And that repetition trains your mind, emotions, and body to stabilize a new frequency, a frequency that was once just a vision but is now a living reality. You're no longer reaching for alignment, you're radiating it. This is how spiritual awakening becomes sustainable, through emotional discipline, energetic hygiene, and the spiritual wisdom to see every moment as a chance to choose again. You begin to understand that the true quantum jump isn't a one-time event, but a decision you remake every morning, every hour, every breath. You don't need to be perfect. You need to be loyal to your values, to your energy, to your evolution. And over time, the very fabric of your reality begins to reshape, not because you forced it, but because you repeated coherence so often that the universe had no choice but to meet you there. To affirm your commitment to inner coherence over perfection, comment below. I choose stability over control. Your journey towards spiritual awakening and quantum alignment deserves to be witnessed. As you move beyond synchronicity and step into the silence of quantum alignment, remember, this is not the end. It's the threshold of deeper awakening, where your soul begins to speak louder than the signs. Your journey is just beginning, and the universe is watching how you walk through the unknown. If today's message from Spiritual Wisdom resonated with you, don't forget to like this video. Share it with someone who needs this insight. Subscribe to our channel and turn on the notification bell so you never miss what's next on your path to spiritual growth and transformation.